Good evening. It is Sunday, April the 3rd, about 8:15 p.m. My name is Shay Gibson with Weather Flow. This is your Chucktown wind report coming from Wind Alert. So here, let's take a look at the surface map and what's going on. I'm going to talk about the winds and weather for the next 3 days through Wednesday, and then even later in the week, we could see some strong southerlies return ahead of another strong cold front. We'll get into that in just a minute. Right now, looking at the surface map, we had high pressure today that was driving those northerly winds down into our area. Those faded by late afternoon. We had a separate ridge of high pressure pull in a modest southeast flow, which is still ongoing right now. As we go through the night, we'll see this high pressure move over here. This high pressure will move across the northern Gulf of Mexico and park right about here. Now, we've talked about this before, where we get high pressure in this area, and then we also get a coastal ridge that will probably build as the sun comes up tomorrow morning by default. When high pressure doesn't have a defined center, a lot of times we get this high pressure ridge built in right here, and then this fades back out in the Atlantic and actually builds. So we get a southerly flow coming up from this, and then we get a westerly upper flow coming from this high pressure in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico, and that's our return flow for the sea breeze. So that creates that wind wheel along the coast and just gets stronger and stronger. Now we add low pressure up here to the north that's going to be driving down through this area and swooping up. A weak cold front will approach the Appalachian Mountains and fizzle out as it gets hung up across the mountains and then tries to get into the upstate, but not before helping give a little bit of a boost to that southerly wind along our coastline. So we're looking at about 11 to 15 knots beaches, maybe a little bit higher. If we look at Tim Kent, our meteorologist Tim Kent has predicted for tomorrow, and this is in our Wind Alert app, and iKitesurf, SailFlow, and all of our other apps and products. This is our pro forecast that he's put together for tomorrow afternoon. And he's talking about the high pressure shifting off the southeast coast Monday, upper level trough. Either way, the bottom line here is that a robust sea breeze coupling with southwesterly flow tomorrow. And here's his charts. So we're looking at low to mid-teens here along the beaches with a later build. Now these numbers could start reaching low teens around 12 to 1 p.m. along the beaches, and I'm expecting these numbers to jump up maybe just a little bit more. We could see 15 to 19 knots through the harbor, but for the most part, I do like the tables here. I'm in full agreement with them, as we could see our later sea breeze with that cold front giving just a little bit of a boost, but not until later in the afternoon versus our typical early building sea breezes. So I'll go with Tim for tomorrow on the tables here, 11 to 15 beaches. 13 to 17 in the harbor with potential for 15 to 19. Now, here's a model forecast. Now, for Tuesday, it looks like the winds are going to come up from the northeast, and we have to be really careful about which direction these winds are going to be versus onshore to offshore. If we look at about 62, 63 degrees, or even 65 degrees or more in an azimuth angle, then that's going to be the onshore flow. And what's going to happen here is here comes that low through the area tomorrow. You see the tail end of it break up along the Appalachian Mountains, and here's this high pressure that's going to build into from the north. Now this is going to be a strong mid-level high pressure at 1,033 millibars, and this is the center right here. So we're going to be far enough away for a decent little gradient to build between this offshore troughing and this high pressure. The question is going to be, will it be more of a northerly wind, northeasterly wind, or will we get that northeast wind which bends along the coastline and picks up those east-northeasterly sea breeze couplings? So that's going to be the big question as far as Tuesday, is will we get it? Now here's that is actually by 1 o'clock in the afternoon Tuesday. So if this high pressure can make it just a little bit more east, the chances of that happening are even greater as the winds lean a little bit more into the coastline. So that's where Tuesday is going to be kind of iffy. I'm going to go ahead and call northeast winds 14 to 18. If we get the east-northeast lean with the coupling of the sea breezes, we could be looking at 18 to 22 knots. So that's going to be sort of the variableness there. Now as we get into Wednesday, we look at the high pressure setting up. Let me back up just a little bit here. We have high pressure just pushing off the coastline for Wednesday, which could start a little bit of a ridging process for some weaker southeast winds. But if it does push far enough out, we could see some decent sea breeze coupling, get some low teens on Wednesday. So I'm going to call for 9 to 13 knots south or south-southeast Wednesday. And then as we get into Thursday, we're looking at a very strong cold front that is going to be making its way to the area. And then we could see some real high boosting of those southerlies, and that's where the jet stream and everything sort of gets real squirrely at that time, with the dip from the polar jet drawing another cold front across the country. And then we see something similar to what we saw this past Friday afternoon with the southerlies that came up. So let's take a quick look at our area right now. Pretty quiet out there. We have a modest southeast flow going on. We have about 9 knots widely, 8 to 9 knots. A little bit less at Folly Beach. There's a spire at the end of that pier which sort of blocks off the area, but you get the gist of it. We have about 9 to 11 knots. Very modest flow, And as we go in time, we look at the models. Let's go ahead and take a look at the model forecast and details. And here's the flow for tomorrow. So the models are pretty much in agreement. And let me go ahead and activate all of them. This is just for guidance. Models are only for guidance, so we never take them for granted. And winds could come up several knots higher than what the models do have. But the GFS here in this orange does come up to about mid-teens, and then it picks up through the late afternoon and into the day. These higher numbers overnight are nocturnal jetting, where some bits of that cold front still reside to the north. But we're looking at all the models pretty much in agreement to at least 10 knots. So that means that's a good thing. It means we could probably see some higher speeds along the beaches. Now, as we get into Tuesday, this is where it gets squirrely. Some of the models are leaning a little bit northeast. Some are not. Some are keeping it more of a north or north-northeast flow. And we'll have to wait and see what the high pressure to the north does for that. As we get into Wednesday, though, this is where the numbers start to climb as we see the southerly flow return with high pressure building out in the Atlantic. The question is going to be whether or not we get ridging effect to keep southeast winds on a weaker side throughout the day Wednesday, or do they become more southerly and couple with a more onshore or sideshore sea breeze. That's going to be the question of which one happens there. So Thursday, models are jumping up. We're seeing 20s from the GFS, upper teens from other models, and that's just a little bit far out to tell for right now. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with this cold front set up in the jet stream. Usually the upper air pattern does give us some hints on what's going to happen. So Thursday is very possible. It's all a timing thing at this point. So looking at temperatures, I'm looking at the weather bell models at the GEFS 5 kilometer. I'm going to go ahead and take a peek down here to South Carolina for temperatures. And here's 16-day 2-meter temperatures for tomorrow. We're looking at about 76 degrees. I'm looking at today's temperature. 76 degrees topping out inland. That means we could probably be down near the upper 60s to near 70 at the marine zones where the cooler water resides. Water temperature is now 66.6 degrees in the Charleston area, so it's on the up. The Cannonball jellyfish have arrived, so they're here. We know that the temperatures are in the upper 60s at this point. For the most part, those temperatures will fluctuate about 2 to 4 degrees. And our low temperatures overnight, looks like we take a little bit of a dive Tuesday night to 43. We see a couple of touches down to the low 40s this week, and that could be widespread even along the beaches, except for right along the Barrier Island side of the beaches. You might see just a few degrees higher than that. But the jumpiness is due to an unsettled air pattern that's going to be going over the area. So we have the warmer temperatures of the southerly winds, the cooler temperatures on Tuesday with the northeasterly or east northeasterly winds. Back up on the southerlies on Thursday, back down again post-frontal. And then it looks like next week we kind of pan out. That could be indicative of a strong Bermuda high setup for next week, but that's getting a little bit early. And I think that will do it for the Chucktown wind report. And I will be back on tomorrow. We'll talk about tomorrow's winds in the Chucktown wind report itself. I'll do a couple of updates, and then we'll take a look tomorrow night on a video. I'll come on and do another one for what the winds are going to be doing for Tuesday. Until then, thanks for watching and take care.